Good morning, church family. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're able to join us yesterday, Sunday at church. It was just a great time to worship the Lord together, but it is Monday morning now, and we start a new week of reading God's Word together. And so today we are actually going to wrap up our reading in the book of Jeremiah. I know we flew through Jeremiah. We only had a few days to cover this entire book, but we've really seen God do a lot of awesome things for Israel as they were taken captive, and He promised to restore them. Friday in our reading of Jeremiah 30, we saw that He promised He would restore their possessions and that soon He would restore their health. He would restore them to their land. And so today we fast forward one chapter to Jeremiah chapter 31, and we are going to be in verses 31 through 37. So just a quick 7 verses here in Jeremiah 31, verses 31 through 37. And so remember, everything God has done up to this point, He's promised them that He's going to bring them back, He's going to restore them. And here, God promises that He's going to establish a new covenant with His people. Throughout here, we're going to see 5 different statements God makes where He says, I will, where we see God taking initiative and establishing this covenant. But before we do, I want to kind of show some clarifications that God makes. He said that this is not going to be like the covenant that He had made before with Israel, the multiple covenants that He had made that Israel had broken. You see, these former covenants God had made, and God had kept His side of the covenant, but every time after time, Israel had broken them, and they would have to be renewed. They kept having these renewed covenants over and over again, but God makes it clear here to Jeremiah that a renewed covenant is not what the people need. This is not what the goal was. The goal of this new covenant was internal transformation. And that transformation was solely based on God forgiving the people of Israel for turning away from Him. You see, they had broken these covenants. God never broke them, but they had broken them, and He was merciful. And He offered them in this new covenant something deeper. He offered them a permanent relationship. God says that the day is coming soon where He will establish this new covenant, which will be a permanent, enduring relationship with the people of Israel. And so when we look in verses 31 through and 34 or 33 and 34, we find these 5 I will statements. In 31, He says, I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. And then we skip down to verse 33. He said, for this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days. I will put my law within them. I will write it on their hearts. I will be their God, and they shall be my people. And then in verse 33 it says, and I will forgive their iniquity, and I will remember their sin no more. And then, so God is promising that in this covenant, this is what's going to happen. Ultimately, He's going to do all these great things for Israel, and ultimately He's going to forgive their sin. But then we see in verses 35 through 37, he offers some type of hypothetical. He says that if the sun stops shining by the day, that if the moon and stars stop shining by the night, then that is when God's covenant will end. And what He's saying is that He's in control of these things, that these things are never going to end without His say, and therefore His covenant is going to endure forever. It goes on down, and He says, only if the heavens can be measured and the foundations of the earth can be searched out will I reject Israel. And we know that the heavens can't be measured, that we can't discover and search out the foundations of the earth. Therefore, we can know that God's covenant with Israel will never end. And God has been merciful to them, and God is merciful to us. They turned their back, they broke the covenant so many times, but He offered forgiveness, and He promised to be with them and to endure with them to the end. And so I hope that encourages you today. God is with you. He is with you today. He is with you always. So follow Him, walk with Him, and obey Him. So our reading today, Jeremiah 31, verses 31 through 37, this Monday morning. I hope you're able to start your day off with some time in the scriptures this morning. Know that I love you. Know that I'm praying for you, and I will see you tomorrow morning.